People don't always know that in astrology, it would be more accurate for you if you used the right house distribution system for your own chart. Now, it wouldn't just be more accurate just because it represents who you are more, or it makes more sense to you, but it would also be more accurate because it would be able to unlock the reasoning or the correlations between the different timing in your life, the different connections that you have to other people, and all the different relationships that you have to your own evolution as a soul in a human body. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. I am Jo Hummingbird. I'm an evolutionary astrologer and an Usui Reiki master, and I'm here to help you deep dive into the worlds of astrology, Reiki, mysticism, and so much more. And today I wanted to bring you an episode on how to make astrology more accurate for you using either one of these two house systems that you will most commonly see in astrology in this realm of work. Most commonly, you're going to probably hear about Placidus, which is not the one that I use, but I do use whole sign, which is the other one that you'll most commonly hear about as well. And we'll get into all the nitty-gritty details as to why I use that one, why I don't use Placidus, the pros and cons between both, the differences between them, and all of that jazz. So if you are interested in learning how to make astrology more accurate for yourself using the correct house system for you, then keep on listening to this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. Astrology can help us determine the complexities of human relationships in so many different ways, but one of the best ways is through synastry charts. These charts can help us to directly understand what is unfolding between two people in this lifetime and in lifetimes behind us or beyond us. Whether or not they're involved with each other romantically, platonically, ancestrally, professionally, or even otherwise, synastry is still going to be one of the easiest ways to discover the dynamics of different soul connections. And if you want to see what cosmic connection you have with a certain someone in your life or on your mind or in your heart, then head to the link in the description box or in the show notes below to book your synastry chart reading with me today. Now, back to Hummingbird Arcana. So I want to keep this relatively simple for you to understand. I don't want to give you a bunch of big giant words and a bunch of overwhelming information that you could, probably look up on your own time on the internet. I want to give it to you straight. I want to be as direct and as clear about it as possible. So Placidus and whole sign are the two most common house systems that you will see in astrology. And what I mean by house systems, I'll give you a brief definition of that so we're not wasting too much time here. Astrology, whenever you're looking at the wheel of a natal chart versus, just some free cafe astrology type thing, we all start somewhere. We all have humble beginnings when we're learning our free astrology charts online and looking at a chart summary from an algorithm. But, cafe astrology will give you, like a table. It won't give you like a full chart. It says that it's a chart, but it's a table. That's what that's called. Whenever you have a grid and information on one way going x-axis and one way going y-axis and all the other data in between, fill in the blank, that's a table. That's not a chart. The chart is the wheel, is the one with all the shapes and the planets all over the different houses, and you see the different signs and you see all of every symbol and you see all the numbers for the degrees. That is a chart. And when you look at your natal chart and you see the 12 signs there, you'll also see little lines extending out from each of those signs into the center of the chart that are divided up into 12 sections, just like there are 12 signs. So those are going to be the houses, and they can be distributed in two common different ways. Again, the first one is Placidus, and the second one is whole sign. Let's talk about Placidus first, though. So Placidus is the system in which it unevenly distributes the degrees of the 12 houses, allowing for up to two zodiac signs to be in one particular house at any given time. And because these houses are unevenly distributed, it leaves room for certain houses to only be able to have one sign and every other house to potentially have two. So this is the method that is going to be the one that gained its popularity amongst astrologers during the Renaissance era, and it has been most commonly practiced throughout most free astrology software programs and horoscopes and zodiac memes you see online through pop astrology. This is going to be the house system that those are using. and it's operating based off of the archetypes of nuance within the human existence, within the cosmological experience of existing on this floating rock hurling through space, thousands, millions, cajillions miles an hour. Who even fucking knows how fast we're going? And, there's just this nuanced way that life loves to play out. There's a duality here. There's, as much as we want to conceptually limit ourselves to a binary, there's a place that exists beyond that. And astrology, from the Placidus standpoint, really loves diving into those nuances. It really wants to give you the insight and the perspectives, and play devil's advocate to every perspective possible, to give you as much information to work with as you possibly can have. I personally find Placidus to be a little overwhelming because of that. Not in the sense that it can't be read, not in the sense that I didn't start out reading that, because that is what I started out reading with. But I will say that Placidus is also going to be the system that allows you to kind of understand how you fit as a puzzle piece into the collective versus how your story is playing out individually. That's going to be more so whole sign. But when it comes to how you fit into, I don't want to say society per se, but how you fit into the grand scheme of everybody else around you and you, bigger picture, that is where Placidus comes in handy for sure. Now, when it comes to whole sign, this is going to be the system that I use personally in the readings that I offer, unless somebody desires otherwise, in which I will then offer Placidus if they choose to do so. But whole sign is going to be the one in which evenly distributes all the degrees of each sign amongst the degrees of the houses as well. This house distribution method was the one that actually originated with all of astrology. It was the one that existed first because nobody was over there separating the sky from the houses. They were all just kind of a part of each other, and the only thing that was rotating was the signs. The houses stayed in the same place, and they didn't shift around. They didn't change the number of degrees that was in each of them to make it fit a certain way of technological advancement. So there, wasn't a whole lot of arguing going on about which one was more accurate when ancient astrology comes into play. And this is where ancient astrology, or more ancient forms of astrology from different cultures and different backgrounds, are going to follow. And this is going to be the more predictive, the more karmic, and kind of the more existential of the house systems. I find that it's a lot more out of your control, but it's still a part of your fate and your destiny. There's just some things that, you might have more control over than others, but it's definitely geared more by house, by rulership, by placement, rather than it is by the nuance or the double entendre of any specific sign, house, or placement itself. And I want to get one thing clear for sure. I'm not saying any of this about either one of these to say that one is better than the other. Again, I will read Placidus if somebody wants me to read Placidus for them. But by default, I choose whole sign because it is more predictive, it is more concrete, and it doesn't leave room for anything to get super wriggly or super wormy or slimy or too nuanced to where you can't even make sense of it. Because as much as human life is just one big nuance and is one walking contradiction, and it's polarizing, but it's also a gray area, but it's also super easy to get lost in the sauce of that nuance at the same time, because life is, as much as it is a dualistic thing and a nuanced thing and a gray area thing, it is also just as easily confusing to be in the existence of that, rather than just observing it or making any sense of it, because it's so informational, it's so sensational. We have the 5 tangible senses, but then also the extrasensory perceptions as senses as well. I do also have a episode coming out on the 7 psychic clairs that is very soon to come, so keep your eyes peeled on that. I will link it here after the fact whenever it's uploaded, so that way if you come back to this episode, or if you're watching this after that one comes out, it will be here for you. But there are so many different senses that we have that we can kind of cross-wire ourselves if we are putting too much stimulus into the computer that is our human brain. And that's why sometimes Placidus isn't the best idea to use, because there's just so much information there, and whole sign can be a lot more concrete, direct, to the point, kind of cut and dry sometimes, depending on what is happening in the chart and what's going on in the transits even, or depending on what placements are happening in certain houses or signs, or what other aspects are being made. There's a whole like combination of everything that creates the unique cosmic blueprint for everybody in their own unique individual chart. But between the house systems, whole sign is going to be the one that I prefer to use and that I recommend people to use if they're trying to be a little bit more definite about their lives. They're trying to make sense of it. They're trying to understand things on a deeper level without it having to be super analysis paralysis, Phil, you know? If you're not sure where to start when it comes to booking a session, I feel you 100%. With all the different wisdom that we integrate on our spiritual paths, it can really get overwhelming to look at all of your options for tools to help you integrate it. So if you feel intuitively called to book a session, but you don't know which one will be the best fit for you for what you're looking for, I'm now making free discovery calls available for you. And in this complimentary 30-minute call, we will briefly discuss what areas of your focus are on your path with zero pressure for you to immediately book a session after. You are in the driver's seat the whole time, all the way through. Bookings for free discovery calls are open now, and the link is in the description box or the show notes below if you want to get one for yourself. Now let's get back into this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. Personally, why I use whole sign is not just because it's more accurate and it's more concrete, but I also find that for predictive astrology, with zodiacal releasing and transits and integrating annual profections and the progressed charts even, all of that becomes a lot more grounded in the delivery of the message and what the cosmos is trying to tell you if you're using whole sign, where again it kind of ties into the whole analysis paralysis and information overload. If you're trying to get all that information and you're pulling from both perspectives of both signs for 8 out of 12 houses or 10 out of 12 houses, depending on how your Placidus chart overlays itself with the degrees of each house being different. So it just can get really convoluted and it can get really complicated very easily. So whole sign is really good for keeping things simple, but not boiling it down or making it elementary. It's still just as deep and just as profound and important for you in your chart. It's just going to be a little bit more defined in the areas of life, how they're happening by sign, what is actually happening by planet or at like a placement or point in space or aspect by other points in space and placements and planets, luminaries, fill in the blank with what have you. So which one of these do you think that you prefer personally? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm really curious. Let me know. I want to start a conversation about that. Do you want to use whole sign from here moving forward because you think that's actually going to work better and you've been using Placidus, or vice versa? Do you even care about the house systems? Let me know. I really want to hear your perspective down below. But when it comes to making astrology more accurate, it's not just about having the right information or using the right house system and, having a understanding of all the basics of astrology and understanding what other tools interlay into the house system that you're using and how it affects all those other tools. It really also boils down to you being able to sit with the information and have it resonate with you, or if it sinks into your nervous system and gives you a sense of resolve or a sense of clarity, even if it isn't great, uplifting information, or it isn't, the most pleasing information, it can still also be closure or still be resolutionary in nature. It doesn't have to be something that you have to always have a shiny toxic positivity label on. You don't have to make everything sunshine and rainbows for yourself just because astrology happens to be a spiritual tool. No, astrology is a spiritual tool, and you are a spirit having a human experience. And within that human experience, there are going to be parts of it that fucking suck. And astrology can point you in the direction of where those things are, where that area of your life can also tend to be from a cyclical standpoint. And when you're using whole sign, you can find those areas of your life with a lot more ease and a lot more clarity. And again, more information, more analysis paralysis. So keep it simple, keep it grounded, keep it not elementary, but keep it easy is what I want to say. So that is a little bit of the difference between the two. Now, pros to using Placidus, it aligns you with, pop culture. It gets you a lot of notoriety and attention. It makes, using free astrology software easy online without you having to change the settings or know a whole lot of what you're doing. It just kind of defaults to Placidus most of the time if you're using Astro Charts, if you're using Astro-Seek, if you're using Astro.com, if you're using Cafe Astrology. I could list on and on and on and on about all the different softwares that strictly operate off of Placidus when you first log in and it's default. You can obviously edit that in a lot of these different websites, but at the same time, it's really important to be able to know the difference between these and use whichever one fits you best. Now, pros to using whole sign, again, it's going to be a little bit more concrete and definitive for predictions and for karmic cycles and for timing. Specifically with zodiacal releasing, it will be a lot more friendly, because if you're using a Placidus chart for zodiacal releasing, that leaves room for the planetary cycle and the influences of the house that it's in and peak periods and, loosening of bonds and culminating and completions. It will leave just a little bit of a room for calculatory error, because the potential for the lot or whichever part you're checking for the 7 hermetic laws or the 7 hermetic parts, those are going to have a higher potential to be separated between the houses if you're using Placidus versus whole sign. Whole sign will put the 30 degrees of a sign inside the 30 degrees of a house versus, example of Placidus would put, 15 degrees of Capricorn in the first house and 15 degrees of Aquarius. And then that other part of this goes into the second house and then it splits off between Pisces. Like, that's just a little example. That's not anyone's chart in particular. It's just a hypothetical there. But that's kind of where it leaves room to get a little messy, because then if it's not exactly within the third house or exactly within Capricorn, then you can't really just pinpoint it there to that area of life. It has to be the nuance between, Capricorn is split between the first and the 12th, so it's spiritual and itself. But, the first house is going to be defined by Mars energy, so then it's kind of like the crowning of the baby at the birth. It's both being inside the womb and birth at the same time. That's damn near fucking impossible energetically. So I'm not saying that Placidus doesn't operate in that way ever, or not that Placidus can't help zodiacal releasing operate with the lots in that way ever. But if you're using zodiacal releasing, I highly recommend using whole sign, because then it gives the hermetic lots each of their own house and sign and planet type energy to operate with, even if some of them are in the same sign. But that's specifically an example that I like to incorporate to represent why I would use whole sign versus Placidus, is because, again, it is more accurate with predictive astrology techniques that are from, more ancient astrology practices, because that is a Hellenistic astrology practice. That is not particularly evolutionary astrology or any other branch that is particularly Hellenistic. And I do incorporate that into my readings. I have a zodiacal releasing and transit reading in particular. If you want to book one for yourself, they are super fun. You can find out the different peak days and dates and years and months of your life. Like, it can be a year ahead, it can be in the next 5 years, it can be the next 10 years, it can be in the last 5 or 10 years, it can be what's happening in the next couple weeks or couple days. It really gives you a lot of different information. So if you were interested in booking one of those, the information to book your zodiacal releasing and transit reading is down below in the description, as well as in the show notes if you're streaming on a platform instead of watching on YouTube. But these two systems, again, they're the most common two. You're not really going to see a whole lot of other options unless you start getting into like the other really niche branches of astrology, like you're leaning more in towards Vedic astrology, Draconic astrology, Uranian astrology, and there are so many different sub-house divisions between those other branches of astrology that we could sit here and talk about forever, but I won't waste your time doing that. But to sum up these two for you, just to keep it simple and to keep it as bare bones as possible for you to understand, Placidus is going to be more like puzzle piece of fitting into the collective. It's psychological and it is more nuanced. It leaves room for gray areas. It leaves a lot more room for a lot more information and makes things a little more complicated, but it's still useful. Whole sign is going to be more predictive. It is going to evenly distribute everything across all your houses. It is a lot more karmic and existential, and it is really, really good because it's the one that has been around the longest. It is the tried and true of astrology. If you are ever doubting of a house system, you can always default to whole sign and it will get you where you need to go. So again, let me know down below in the comments which of these you prefer, or if you have a different house system from a different branch of astrology that you prefer to use altogether and you want me to talk about that, or you just want to share your thoughts and discuss in the comments. I would love to do that. So let me know down below, again, which one you use or not. And if you enjoyed this episode, let me know if you're watching on YouTube by subscribing to the channel, turning on the post notification bell, and liking the video. And then if you're streaming on a podcast streaming platform, then go ahead and follow my podcast, leave a review about which episode has been your favorite, and let me know in the comment section of your review if you enjoyed any other episode, or if there's another guest you would like me to have on, or any ideas for an episode you want me to have in the future. Let me know. I'd love to have that dialogue with you. But thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. I'm Jo Hummingbird. It is my pleasure to assist you in awakening you to your cosmic divinity. I will see you in the next one. Many blessings, my friends, and take care.